Armed Trump supporters protest in front of FBI Phoenix office. Police name man they say crashed his car and killed himself near the U.S. Capitol. U.S. has shortage of 300,000 teachers, school staff. Taliban government closer to Russia and China at its one-year anniversary. Palestinian artist Motherhood inspires her to create meaningful calligraphy. Largest mosque in Central Asia opens in Nur-Sultan, Kazakhstan. From Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. On Saturday, a group of armed supporters of former President Donald Trump gathered at the FBI office in Phoenix. They were protesting the recent search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. People were seen carrying pistols and assault-type rifles while claiming last week's search of Trump's home in Florida was illegal, according to CNN. FBI spokesperson Kevin Smith said a group of 25 people were peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights, staying on the sidewalks and across the street. Police are investigating an early Sunday morning incident in which a man crashed his car near the U.S. Capitol and fired multiple gunshots before killing himself. Authorities identified the man as Richard A. York III, a 29-year-old from Delaware. Why York chose to drive to the Capitol is unclear. He did not appear to be targeting any members of Congress, the U.S. Capitol Police said. No one else was injured. The incident began around 4 a.m. as York drove his car into a barricade about 1 block east of the Capitol. As he exited the car, the vehicle became engulfed in flames, police said. York then fired several gunshots, apparently into the air. When our officers heard the sound of gunfire, they immediately responded and were approaching the man when he shot himself, Capitol Police said. The agency said it did not appear that any officers fired their weapons. Congress is currently in recess until after Labor Day. Meanwhile, the FBI and U.S. Department of Homeland Security have warned law enforcement agencies of an increase in threats after a search of former President Donald Trump's Florida home last week. On Thursday, National Education Association President Becky Pringle warned the U.S. teacher shortage has spiraled into a 5-alarm crisis. Nearly 300,000 teaching and support positions are left unfilled, and policymakers are taking desperate measures to staff classrooms. Pringle told ABC News teachers' unions have been warning for years that chronic disinvestment in schools has placed untenable pressure on educators. They face low pay and overcrowded classrooms. We have a crisis in the number of students who are going into the teaching profession and the number of teachers who are leaving it, Pringle told the outlet. But of course, as with everything else, the pandemic just made it worse. Muslim holidays will be observed this coming school year for students in San Francisco, the first city in California to make the decision. San Francisco's Board of Education has passed a resolution to recognize Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha as district holidays following a student-led petition. It is the first school district in California to do so. The decision came about as the result of a class project at Raoul Wallenberg High School. Sarah Ushene did a project advocating for schools to observe Muslim holidays, which last year resulted in a petition that she and her peers circulated. An Institute for Social Policy and Understanding study estimates the San Francisco Bay Area is home to around 250,000 Muslims. A project about slavery that requires students to pick cotton from a cotton field at a Hollywood school caused emotional distress to an African-American girl, according to a lawsuit. The girl's parents are seeking $250,000 in damages through the suit filed in a California court. It alleges discrimination and negligence by Laurel Span School in Hollywood. Mother Rashonda Pitts says her daughter has been traumatized by the incident. She said the child has uncontrollable anxiety attacks and experiences bouts of depression when thinking about the cotton-picking project. Pitts was told students in her daughter's class were reading the autobiography of reformer and abolitionist Frederick Douglass. Cotton-picking was among the experiences Douglass wrote about in the book. The teacher required the students to pick cotton to gain a real-life experience as to what the African-American slaves endured. Today is the first anniversary of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Details after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Assalamu alaikum! Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. In international news today, Monday marks a year since the Taliban took control of Afghanistan after almost 20 years of U.S. occupation. The group paraded in the streets as they marked the first anniversary. A national holiday has also been declared. Although no nation has recognized the Taliban-led government, 8 countries have developed closer ties with it. China, Russia, Pakistan, and Turkmenistan now have formally accredited Taliban-appointed diplomats. Malaysia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Iran have also accepted the government's diplomats. However, the country continues to experience a deepening economic and humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, the U.S. and other European countries maintain a freeze on more than $9 billion in Afghan reserves, holding back Afghan banks from operating globally. Although most of Afghan education is in the private sector, where girls have no limitation on schooling, Afghans are unable to afford tuition fees. This has forced a sharp decline in the education sector. As well, the Taliban regime has still not fulfilled its promise to allow girls back into government secondary schools. A day before the anniversary, Taliban fighters fired into the air to disperse a women's protest in the Afghan capital, Kabul. About 40 women chanting bread, work, and freedom marched in front of the Education Ministry building, AFP reports. Pakistan also remains concerned about Pakistani Taliban, which is based in Afghanistan, as well as ISIS. The Taliban, however, claim they have provided security to the country. An in-depth analysis segment on the first year of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan is coming up in our show, so keep watching Muslim News. 30-year-old Hana Hamarshe used to design calligraphy in the presence of her 1-year-old child Yusuf. He inspired her to create designs combining different branches of science. Hamarshe relies on her bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, study of the history of the art of calligraphy, the Arabic language, and related Sufi philosophies about the symbolism of Arabic alphabet letters. She finds her own way to prepare the ink using suitable pigments that can be stable for a long time in her designs. Then she creates her calligraphy with many different Arabic poems popular among her followers on social media platforms. Speaking to Andalu Agency, the artist recalled how her passion for the Arabic language and calligraphy was encouraged by her father since childhood. She said he used to buy books for her and her brothers, which they read together while pondering their intellectual content. A 26-year-old man killed in a shooting at the gates of the Toronto Muslim Cemetery Thursday has been identified as Ayub Hirsi Ali of Barrie, Ontario. Police said the shooting happened at the Richmond Hill Cemetery at about 3:15 p.m. after a funeral service had ended. Ali was attending the burial of Gidid Muhammad, who was shot and killed outside an Etobicoke nightclub on Tuesday, CBC Toronto reports. Police are looking for 3 suspects in connection to Muhammad's death. Investigators believe Ali was targeted. On Friday, a joint Sudanese-Libyan patrol found 20 bodies and rescued 8 surviving migrants in the desert between the two countries. The bodies were found on the borders of the North Darfur region and Libya. Colonel Ali Said, commander of the Sudanese-Libyan Joint Forces, told the Sudan news agency that the joint force is securing the borders between both countries. It is also confronting irregular migration and smuggling on the borders. Sudanese authorities continue to fight human trafficking gangs that transport migrants to Israel via Egypt or Europe via Libya. On Friday, the largest mosque in Central Asia opened in Kazakhstan's capital, Nur-Sultan. It was built at the initiative of first president of Kazakhstan, Nur-Sultan Nazarbayev, and took 3 years. The house of worship has already been ranked one of the world's 10 largest mosques, with a capacity of 235,000 worshippers. Nazarbayev attended the opening of the mosque, timed to coincide with the anniversary of the city's foundation. On Sunday, Israeli air raids on Syria killed 3 soldiers and wounded 3 others in Israel's latest attack on the war-torn country. State media said air defense forces were confronting Israeli bombing raids aimed at targets near the Syrian coastal province of Tartus. Since the civil war broke out in Syria in 2011, Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes inside the country. These have targeted government positions as well as allied Iran-backed forces and Hezbollah fighters. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back. To discuss the first anniversary of the Taliban government after the U.S. withdrawal, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you so much, Samana. Afghanistan has been free from the U.S. occupation now for 1 year. CNN is reporting Afghan Taliban celebrating on the streets of Kabul and look more relaxed, allowing them to film areas which they didn't allow CNN to film in the past. We have a person who spent good amount of time in the field of education, try to reform and develop and establish a system of education. in Afghanistan, Professor Zaher Wahab. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your interest in Afghanistan and the world.
Professor Zaher Wahab is former senior advisor to Minister of Higher Education in Afghanistan from 2002 to 2008, and is a professor and a PhD from the Stanford University. Do you think, Professor, that US did the right thing by withdrawing from Afghanistan?
It was wrong for the United States to invade and occupy Afghanistan, because Afghanistan, the Afghan people had nothing to do with the crime of 9/11. And then again, it was wrong for the United States to withdraw precipitously in August of 2021. Over the 20 years, the United States and its allies made Afghanistan a dependent country, which depended on foreign assistance, and organization and so forth. 85% of its budget came from foreign assistance. There was hardly any development taking place. And then the United States left the country, and it installed, corrupt, nepotistic governments over the 20-year period. Again, it did not try to develop an infrastructure, develop the country so that the country can feed itself and take care of itself. So when the United States left, without telling anybody, exactly a year ago, Afghanistan was not at all prepared to take care of itself in terms of food, education, healthcare, employment, even its defense. And so, no, we have the crisis. And the whole world knows by now that Afghanistan is facing the worst crisis in its history, and one of the worst crises anywhere in the world. Economic, political, social, an international crisis. We could go on and develop these points, but the United States, again, I think, wrongly and criminally invaded Afghanistan and savaged it, and then wrongly and precipitously and suddenly withdrew without preparing the country to manage its own affairs.
Professor Wahab, you have a unique position. Most people in America, they were in support of the invasion, and a lot of people are critical of how they withdraw, not why they withdrew. But you're saying America going there was wrong and America withdrawing there was wrong. Would you be happier if America is still in Afghanistan?
No, I've never done. This was, in a way, colonialism and imperialism in its new form. So we all know this has not been the first time, and it's not going to be the last time that the United States is invading and occupying country as it wishes. But my point is that Afghanistan had little to do with the 9/11. There was no justification for the United States to invade the country. But then if it invaded it, it should have developed it politically, economically, socially, culturally, educationally, in every way. And the United States simply failed to do so, other than, butchering a lot of civilians, and innocent people, but also underdeveloping the country deliberately and not helping the country to develop its own social, economic, political infrastructure. And then it left suddenly. It plunged Afghanistan into a major crisis in its history. So that's why we have these problems now. Politically, economically, socially, and in terms of the isolation. And then not only did the United States leave the country in a very difficult, weakened, and disabled position, but then it confiscated and stole $9 billion of the Afghan money, of the Afghan people, not an Afghan government, and declared sanctions. And the rest of the United States allies followed the United States. Even the international agencies followed the United States by observing the embargoes and the sanctions. And so, the vast majority of the Afghans today are hungry. They can't feed themselves. There's no food, there's no health care, there's no money, there's no employment. Half of the organizations have collapsed. The banking system is barely breathing. This is all the fault of the United States and its allies for deliberately underdeveloping a country.
Let me ask you this. You have written in support of dialogue instead of clash of civilization. Taliban in America were in dialogue for almost 10 years or more, it seems like. So everyone knew that it is coming. Do you think Taliban were successful in dialogue as compared to the United States?
No, I think in terms of the so-called East-West, dialogue, unfortunately, we all know that there's very little place left for dialogue. Hardly any dialogue is really taking place at any level, not just between the Taliban or the Afghanistan and the United States, but throughout the world. And hence, the political military crises in the world. But we have also known about, as I said, American exceptionalism, American arrogance, American supremacy, American imperialism. The United States is not really willing to engage and solve problems with other nations through diplomacy, dialogue, and conversation, because there are other forces in the United States, like the military-industrial complex, which is not really interested in dialogue, but is interested in warfare. Hence, the United States resorting, whether it's Ukraine in Russia or Afghanistan, the United States is not interested in genuine dialogue. Although we all know about the United States and Taliban code conversation, dialogue, diplomacy in Doha with the so-called treaty in February 2020, but that is not being observed, and hence the U.S. drone attack on Afghanistan, killing Zawahiri on the last day of July. So the point is that, although we must engage, the world must engage in conversation and solve problems through cooperation, diplomacy, joint conversations, joint development projects, and a new architecture for, peace, development, and security. But such is not the case as we see.
Professor, let me ask you a question, which you seems to be pretty aware of. I mean, you have been their advisor on education in the last 20 years. You have been teaching as a full-time professor in Kabul. Now, when I interview some people about the girls' education, one professor from Afghanistan, connecting with the Muslim Network TV, told us that most of the schools are actually private sector, not the government schools. And in the private sector schools, all girls are being able to go to school for all classes and all university level. It is only the smaller sector, which is the government public schools, where Taliban are not allowing girls to go in secondary school while allowing primary and higher education. So this is a very complex situation for our audience to understand, at least for me. Could you help us understand what is the situation and what the world can do for girls in Afghanistan to be able to go to school?
Yes, for your viewers, I should point out that Al Jazeera has several very good articles today. So anyone who wants to know more about Afghanistan and the mixed picture in Afghanistan should really look up Al Jazeera. There's a very good article by Mr. Barakat, who is a professor and academic in Doha and at York University. He has a pretty good article, but I keep talking to people almost daily. In fact, I talked to 2 or 3 people today. The education situation is, not so bad, but it's pretty dismal. It's very bad. Most schools in Afghanistan from first grade through the university are public institutions. So there are 39 public institutions of higher learning, about 1,900 public schools. Yes, there are many private schools, K through 12, maybe about 600. And there are about 130 private institutions of higher learning. The situation, though, is that at the higher education level, girls or women are allowed to go to classes, but are at different times and separate from boys. So higher education girls go, say 3 days of the week, and the boys go the other 2 or 3 days, or the boys go in the morning and the girls go in the afternoon. But at the pre-collegiate level, the boys' schools are open, public and private. The problem is that all schools, all institutions are having tremendous economic problems. In private institutions, parents can't afford because they have to spend on food. The public institutions are okay. But we must point out, girls go to school from 1st through 6th grade, but from 7th through 12th grade, most girls' schools are closed. They are not allowed to go to school. And the Taliban are saying, the Minister of Education and Higher Education are saying that they're trying to make the curriculum, quote unquote, in line with the Islamic theology and principles, but also with Islamic national and cultural principles in decrees. I don't know what they mean. So this is the situation in education. In other words, half closed and half closed. At the higher education level, all institutions are open. Most public private institutions had to shut down because they can't afford to run the institution. That's the situation.
Thank you so much, Professor Wahab, for your time at Muslim Network TV. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, and good luck.
Thank you. Back to you, Samana.
Thank you. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.